The prairie was breathing that evening, slow and tired, as if the earth itself felt the weight of a summer that had stretched too long. The air shimmered with dust, and the faint smell of cattle hung over the fields where golden grass bent like weary soldiers. Clara May Reed pressed a damp strand of hair back from her cheek as she leaned against the porch rail, the boards beneath her feet creaking in rhythm with the rocking of her child's cradle inside the house. The hour carried a stillness, but not the kind that promised peace. It was the brittle silence before a storm, when even the sparrows hesitate in flight, and mothers clutch their children closer without knowing why. Her husband, Thomas, stood a few yards out in the yard, his broad shoulders squared as he tightened a harness strap on the bay mare. The horse snorted, uneasy, and Thomas muttered in that low voice of his that could soothe animals but never quite softened enough to calm Clara's heart. She watched him, his shirt clinging with sweat, the brim of his hat shading eyes that had grown more tired these past months. He was only 33, but the land carved men faster than years. Clara loved him the way a woman loves the one who built her a roof, who laughed with her under harvest moons, who carried their daughter high on his shoulders when she was too small to walk. But tonight, she felt an ache gnawing under her ribs, a whisper telling her something was about to break. Inside, little Lila stirred from a nap. 6 years old, all elbows and tangled curls, she blinked against the dim light filtering through the thin curtain. She called out softly, and Clara stepped in, gathering her daughter's small hand, brushing away sleep from her eyes. Lila's voice was always a song, even in fear, even when the world pressed hard against them. Tonight, though, Clara could not bring herself to hum a lullaby. The silence outside pressed too heavy. A sudden thud came from the far end of the yard. Not a natural sound. Not the groan of wood or the cry of an animal. Clara's head snapped toward it. Thomas froze mid-motion, his hand still on the harness buckle. From the distance came the low drumming of hooves. More than one horse. Many. Too many for neighbors or friends. Thomas turned, and for a moment his eyes met Clara's. He didn't speak, didn't need to. She knew. They both knew. The outlaws had come. They had been whispers in town, stories passed at the mercantile, and whispered under breath at the church pews. Riders who swept through lonely homesteads, stripping them bare, leaving ash where there had once been laughter. Clara had prayed those stories would never find their way to her doorstep, but prayer could not stop the sound of hooves thundering nearer, the rough voices carried on the wind. Thomas's voice cut sharp now, steady but hurried. "Get inside. Take Lila. Don't come out until I call." Clara's throat burned as she obeyed, pulling Lila close against her chest. The child's wide eyes searched her mother's face, reading fear before Clara could swallow it down. They slipped into the shadowed house, the thin walls trembling as the riders drew near. Clara set Lila under the table, pressed a finger to her lips, and crouched low. Through the cracked shutters she saw them. Men with faces like leather, bandanas tied at their necks, rifles slung across their backs. They rode hard, circling the house like wolves scenting blood. Thomas stepped forward, rifle in his hands, his frame outlined against the last glow of sun. He shouted, his voice deep, carrying the authority of a man defending more than land. "This is Reed Homestead. Ain't nothing here for you. Keep riding." The men only laughed. The sound was harsh, breaking against the quiet like glass against stone. One raised his pistol and fired into the air. Horses screamed. Lila clapped her hands over her ears. Clara bit her lip until she tasted blood. Thomas fired once, the sharp crack echoing. A rider tumbled from his horse, dust rising as his body struck ground. For a heartbeat there was silence again, and Clara dared to believe maybe, just maybe they would scatter. But wolves do not leave easy prey. Shouts rang out, gunfire split the night, and the air filled with smoke and the acrid stench of powder. Clara pressed Lila flat to the floor, her own body shielding the child. She wanted to rush to Thomas, to scream his name, but fear pinned her tongue. Through the shutter gap she saw him fall. Not slow, not graceful. Just a body jerked back by the force of lead, knees buckling, rifle slipping from his hand. He crumpled into the dust, and the sound that tore from Clara's throat was silent, caught, strangled by terror. Lila whispered "Daddy," and the word was too small, too soft, to bring him back. The riders surged forward, some dismounting, boots pounding against the earth. Clara's mind raced. If they came inside, there would be no mercy. She had heard what men like these did. In that instant, survival took shape in her thoughts not as an option, but as a command. She pulled Lila up, whispering fast and fierce. "Hold tight to me. Don't make a sound." They slipped through the back door, the night swallowing them as gunfire and shouting raged at the front. Clara's bare feet tore against rocks, but she didn't stop. She knew the land, knew where the old well stood, long dry, half forgotten. It was not salvation, but it was a hiding place. She reached it, lungs burning, Lila's sobs muffled against her shoulder. The well's stones were rough, the rope long gone. Clara lowered herself carefully, nails scraping, body straining. With whispered prayers she guided Lila down after her, the child's small arms clinging like roots to her neck. They sank into the cool darkness, the world above only a narrow circle of sky. Clara pressed her daughter against her chest, her heart hammering so loud she feared it would betray them. Above, voices carried. Rough laughter, the scrape of boots against stone. One outlaw paused at the well, peering in. Clara held her breath until her lungs screamed, her hands covering Lila's mouth. The child trembled but did not cry. The man spat, muttered and moved on. The sound of his boots faded, replaced by the crackle of fire. Smoke drifted, curling down the shaft, bitter and choking. Clara's eyes burned, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. She thought of Thomas, lying lifeless, and for one moment the grief threatened to break her. But Lila stirred, whispering into the hollow darkness, "Please, don't pull us out. They already killed my daddy." The words pierced Clara deeper than any bullet could. She kissed the child's hair, whispering back, "Hush now, hush, Mama's here." Time stretched, each heartbeat a century. The riders ransacked, their laughter echoing, then fading as hooves pounded once more into the night. Smoke lingered, but silence returned, broken only by the crackling ruin of wood. Clara dared not move until the sky above paled with dawn. Her arms ached from holding Lila, her body stiff, but still she waited. When the first birds sang, cautious and thin, she knew the wolves had gone. Climbing from the well was a struggle, each stone biting into her hands, but desperation lent her strength. She lifted Lila up, the child's small hands gripping the rim until she could scramble over. Clara followed, emerging into the morning light that revealed the truth she had dreaded. The house was a skeleton, charred beams still smoldering, the smell of ash thick in the air. The corral was empty, gates hanging open. Chickens lay scattered, feathers scorched. The world she had built with Thomas was gone. Clara sank to her knees in the dirt, clutching Lila to her chest. The girl's face pressed into her mother's neck, her sobs muffled, her words broken. "Daddy's gone." Clara's own tears fell silently, soaking into the dust. She had no answers, no promises left to give. Only the weight of her daughter in her arms, the memory of a husband who would never return, and the hollow knowledge that they were alone. Yet even in that ruin, even as grief pressed down like a stone, a spark remained. For Clara was alive. Lila was alive. And as the wind shifted, carrying the ashes of her past across the prairie, she felt the faint stir of something deeper than fear. Resolve. The world had tried to bury them, but they had survived. They had hidden in darkness, and now they would climb out, step by trembling step, into whatever light remained.